That we'll call the hearing to order. Commissioner level planning and zoning hearing. With regards to ordinance number 266-25. Present, we have all three commissioners. Meeting's being recorded on Zoom. If you address the commission, please come in front, state your name and address. Record. And all of the correspondence that we've received will be made part of the records, or if you've sent us letters or documents, those will be included in the official record for this meeting, so you don't need to reiterate or reread any of that documentation for us. With that, Michelle, would you read this public notice? Oh, sorry. Just have to talk about.
Notice is hereby given that the following hearing will be held in the Bonneville County Courthouse, 605 North Capitol Avenue, Idaho Falls, Idaho. April 1st, 2025 at 11 o'clock a.m. by the Bonneville County Commissioners for the purpose of public hearing to consider interim ordinance 266-25 and ordinance preventing mining operations associated with water recharge facilities pursuant to Idaho Code 67-6523. The full interim ordinance is available for public review and located in the County Commissioner's office. That was published on March 15th of 2025.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll turn the time over to planning and zoning Director Austin to give us the background.
Yeah, this is Austin Black, Bonneville County Planning and Zoning. So just a little bit of background on this ordinance and I guess a little bit of why it came to be. So as Commissioner Mallard mentioned, as was published in the notice, Idaho Code 67-6523 authorizes the Board of County Commissioners to adopt an interim ordinance to impose a moratorium if a governing board finds that imminent peril to the public health, safety, and welfare requires adoption of said ordinance. Through this process, the county has found the state of Idaho, who approves the funding for the water recharge facilities, does not have any formal state statute or permitting process for the mining operations required to create these facilities, thereby necessitating an amendment on the county's part. Current water recharge facilities and their associated mining operations in the county have been found to cause adverse effects on the public health, safety, and welfare, such as public road deterioration, as well as gravel, dust, and noise pollution, along with traffic safety due to heavy and slow moving vehicle at high volumes, all of which must be accounted for and properly mitigated, and no formal permitting process to protect adjacent landowners by the state of Idaho or Bonneville County has been in place. There has been some claims on traffic safety that it should be noted that this particular moratorium would be specific to applications made after today, April 1st, 2025, if this moratorium was to go into effect. And that's really, I think, all that I have, just kind of a brief overview. If there's any questions or anything the commissioners want me to expound on, I will. I think we're all aware of concerns that we've had with these associated facilities as far as the road 105th East and the other traffic safety claims that have been made. So
Questions? Austin? Okay, thank you, Austin. Commissioner Mallard had some comments I will make with regards to kind of the history of the record and for those that are popped into this meeting, understand a little bit about how this has come to life.
Thank you. The first thing I want everyone to recognize, I mean, most people here are pretty familiar with it looks like, but for the general public, this is a new process for all concerned. it- with at least the enterprise and progressive projects on Highway 26, the state issued permits for recharge basins and work started without any county input whatsoever. So, I mean, it feels like that's important for the public to know, is that this work started without any request from the county, without any permitting. And so we are now in the middle of this meat grinder, so to speak. I do want to point out that water studies by the state show that the properties here at issue are suited for the purposes that they're being used for. Their studies did not go beyond that. They were focused on the hydrology aspects and whether that property would be good for that. The water board has made informal assurances to us that they will require county permits before going forward on any more of these because of the problems that we've experienced and brought to their attention with the progressive and enterprise recharge basins on Highway 26. So I've received those assurances from the highest level and from others who are involved in the permitting process. So these problems, have been a nuisance for everyone in this room. But it was also a learning process, and I do believe that everyone has learned from that process and is going to take different action going forward from here. The other thing you should know from the county point of view is that we have been working on an ordinance that directly addresses these recharge basins. This is something new for our county, especially when it comes to the interface between ag and the higher population. So this is something that our planning and zoning department has been working on and are currently working on. The last thing that I want to say is that there is an appeal hearing tomorrow for the use permit for the enterprise mining operation on 55th. That is not this, or this is not that. So today, please limit your comments to the moratorium going forward. And remember that the moratorium is regarding the mining operations. It is not to do with the state or the hydrology. And I guess the last thing we would just say is that pretty unanimously, even for the people who have problems with these projects, we just want to state for the record that we are in support of the recharge basins and that we do support the overall goals of what the water board is doing here. We just think we need a little more interface.
Thank you.
Then I would just agree with Commissioner Mallard.
Okay, as would I, and I think it's important for everyone to understand that our interest as elected commissioners is for the citizens of Montgomery County first, for the health of our community, for the long-term health of our citizens, our children, our grandchildren, and that as such, we need to take a longer look approach. And it's not about today or tomorrow, but about the health of our aquifer, our community, our farming, our industry, for the next generations. And in view of that, and it's hard in our society not to think of when the game is over or the app ends or the next 10 minutes goes by and the 10 years that the construction was designed to last. But the 100, 200 or 1,000 year look at what we're doing and how it affects the future of what we can continue to do as residents in this wonderful place. And that being said, I believe that any plan that affects us and our neighbors should be looked at in a longer term approach. We don't blame the state for issuing, the need to put water back in the aquifer. I think there's lots of history there, and you're the ones that adjusted that artificially in the tens and twenties of the 19th century by digging canals and putting water in them and adjusting all that stuff. And the whole history takes a longer look than just saying, well, look, we can do this and solve the problem. But how we do that, I think, is important. And when I first heard of these injection sites, I thought, well, that's cool because look, Rigby Lake is a highly used recreational facility that solves that issue. We have the opportunity to build several of those in Bonneville County that provide an opportunity to put water into the aquifer and a place for the residents to recreate and utilize that water, which is great. I grew up in the country where you went swimming in every gravel pit that had water. That's not so much a problem now because they don't run water into the gravel pits. Oh, yes, we are. We're kind of back to that. And I would like to see a plan that looks at the long-term survivability of this project instead of a fenced pond with no trespassing signs. And instead, because I understand there's already been kids crossing fences and swimming in one of the ponds. That's gonna happen. So I think we should maybe work towards making that part of the long-term plan and solving interests for the community as a little broader picture. That's just my opinion. This is an opportunity for me to express that. Do you have any other issues or information, Austin, before we open this for public input?
I think so. I think Commissioner Mallard covered it.
Okay, first we'll deal with public input from on-site in this room. If you're online visiting us by Zoom, and you would like to provide public input, when we go to the online portion, if you click the little button at the bottom that says raise your hand, then we'll unmute you and invite you to participate. And with that, we'll public input on site. Hand at the back corner first. Yes, if you would please, and state your name and address.
We are recording
Yeah,
by
these
video and audio these two outlets.
Which also provides subtitling for those of us that are hearing impaired.
Well, great. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm Cooper Fritz. I coordinate the recharge program for the Water Resource Board. I work in the Department of Water Resources building at 900 North Skyline Drive. And I just want to say that, recharge is a potential alternative to curtailment. And, the state is heavily invested in recharge, but we're not going to consider project funding that have not been formally approved or otherwise acknowledged formally by the county. That said, we encourage the county to treat recharge projects the same way that they treat other infrastructure projects. We don't have a blank check. That was stated at a previous meeting that we had a blank check. We're under a lot of scrutiny about how the money is being spent. So that said, this moratorium, there's been speculation that this is an anti-recharge moratorium. I do not think that appears to be the case. Rather, I think it appears to have the potential to pave the way for more successful basin projects to kind of codify these lessons that we've all learned. And to that extent, I think it's worth supporting.
Thank you. Appreciate your input.
So you're supporting the moratorium, is that what you're saying?
Or while we codify these. Yeah, I think the intent is to codify the lessons that we've all learned. And if that is the intent, which there's no evidence to suggest that it's not, I want people to understand that I don't think we view this as anti-recharge. I think what we view it as is a pause in order to have maybe better, more productive projects in the future. And I think it can increase our opportunity for partnership. And for that, I think it's worth taking this time to take a breath and look forward to smoother projects.
So thank you.
And you're speaking for the water board.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next. Ray and many places it's way to be a point, but I don't have a laser, so.
My name is Alice Jepson. I live at 8548 North 55th East. So I live right next to where one of the new proposed projects has not been approved. Is at. I wrote a statement so I can leave it with you, and I also brought some suggestions on. I hate it when people bring me just problems and don't bring me suggestions.
Appreciate that.
So I brought you some suggestions in addition to my statement. So I live in one of the two houses closest to the proposed aquifer recharge pit by Progressive Canal Company. So sorry, I should have brought a map, but my house sits here. The project will be right here, and my neighbor's house sits here. So my house is definitely directly will be affected by this. I am a business owner, a first responder chaplain, a hospice chaplain, and the steward of a 1914 homestead. That's right next to this project. I've seen the best and the worst in people, especially in this situation. I'm here to share my perspective out of months, after months of listening, researching, and reflecting. I support this recharge project. My husband and I both do, and I'm speaking on behalf of both of us today. I know that some of my neighbors do, some of my neighbors don't. There are a lot of concerns. I've spoken with county planning and zoning, realtors, water specialists, project planners, and homeowners near other recharge sites. I've done my own research online. I've sought to understand before forming my stand, because that's how I make decisions carefully and deliberately. When this home, Neil Landon, the former owner, promised he wouldn't sell this adjacent land to developers for housing. But the one thing then is consistent in life is change. And now Neil wants to profit from a sale. And as a business owner, I get that. And I would feel the same way in his shoes. If we block this recharge and no one buys the land for farming at the price that he wants to sell it at, I do know and have talked to 2 developers that are ready to step in. I've seen a parcel on 55th that formerly had 5 building lots and now is set to become a dense neighborhood of spec houses on tiny lots. That has just shifted with time and money from having 5 lots to being able to build a neighborhood. Like I said, change is always consistent. If this recharge fails, that same contractor does plan to buy Neil's land, rezone it eventually, and build 60 to 110 homes. I moved to our home for peace, open space, my llamas, goats, chickens, and not a subdivision. To me, a recharge pit is a better neighbor than rows of houses. As commissioners, you're tasked with leaving this county better than you found it. I feel the same about my home. Recharging our aquifer benefits everyone long-term, and I'm willing to play my part. Let me touch on some key issues that have been raised by others. First of all, change. People resist it, but it's inevitable. I'd rather have a recharge pit preserving open space than a neighborhood with fences against my pasture. With Progressive, I will know my one neighbor, and with the subdivision, I will not know my neighbors. Truck traffic, yes, construction will bring traffic temporarily for a few years. I live on 55th. It's a busy road. I've lost pets to this busy road and speeding cars. Harvest season already brings trucks, and there are businesses around us that are work with the farmers. And I would frankly prefer a few years of dirt hauling for one quiet neighbor over decades of construction for a subdivision with lots of tiny houses. We'll still end up with that same traffic. It'll just be for longer with lots of little houses. Past mistakes. Progressive's first recharge on the Ryrie Highway, now Mount Ryrie, as we affectionately call it, and Enterprises pit near Darla and Dana Miller's home show what happens when promises are not kept. Mount Ryrie's neighbors are not happy despite what's been said. Darla and Dana Miller, just a quarter mile from me. I can see the dirt mound out my window. Were promised protections that were not honored. Damaging their home and property value. Poor planning and communication fueled fear here. You can fix this by learning from those mistakes and setting clear guidelines to protect us, the homeowners. Recommendations for a better process. Here's what I propose. Beautification over fencing. The county requires at this time chain link fences around recharge pits. Why? Canals and ponds aren't fenced, and these pits hold water just 60 days of the year. Fences like that feel out of place in the country. Instead, I propose that you redirect that money to trees. My husband is an arborist, and we have brought to the county some low water options to share for trees. Or create public amenities like walking paths, sledding hills, or bike trails. Make these spaces that connect us, not alienate us. Communication. Homeowners like me need honest, frequent updates, backed by simple, clear documentation, not legalese that is open to interpretation. Address wells, home damage, traffic, and property values up front. Consider compensation for those most affected. These projects will profit canal companies, while we, the homeowners next to them, will bear the costs. Verbiage. Labeling this as a gravel pit cuts my home's value by 30%. It implies that eventually a dump or a hatch pit could be put there in later years. Instead, call it a recharge basin from the beginning with long-term protections, 50+ years. Like I said, my home's 100 years old. I'd like to see 100 years of protection on this, so that people see it for what it is. So that when I go to sell my home, people don't say, well, it was a gravel pit, it could go back to a gravel pit, which indicates then we can turn it into a dump, then we can do other things with it. If we can call it what it is from the beginning, that will help. Limit input. Only those within a quarter mile should weigh in. Those individuals' input should be given the highest priority and most significant consideration. Beyond that, as I see it, because I do live close to several of these projects, they haven't really affected me, but the traffic has. But it's not like some of my neighbors who are here today who have been deeply and profoundly and irrevocably impacted. So beyond that, traffic's the only impact, not property or peace. Fewer voices will help streamline decisions. Deadlines and accountability. Set reasonable and firm timelines. If canal companies go over their completion dates, find them and send that money to the affected homeowners, not to the county. If the county or another company causes delays, they pay the fines to the canal company and the homeowners. If the public opposition within that quarter of a mile, that is what holds up the project, then no fines have to be paid, but no homeowners benefit either. This keeps everyone accountable. My closing thoughts. I am less than a quarter mile from Darla and Dana's nightmare with Enterprise. Their mistreatment, broken promises, property damage feels almost vindictive. It's why we're here. From past projects, has created this problem now, and you can change that. You can set a precedent, even a national precedent, for aquifer recharge done right, protecting peace, land, and water with transparency and care. I believe this recharge is best for my family and our community's future if it is done right. So, work for everyone. Thank you. As I said, I've listed out the concerns and some propositions on some other things. This is my first time coming to one of these. I'm sorry, I don't know the procedure, but I printed them up and can give them to you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Does anybody have questions? Okay. Go ahead. My name is Kevin Skinner and my address is 9325 North, 55 East. And so I'm a mile north of that intersection of Highway 26 and 55th. I'm almost far enough away that it really doesn't have any direct impact on me. But I'm not here for the Millers or for the Jepsons or the others. I'm here because for what's right. And I think what I've seen so far is not right as far as, in the Miller's case, a house being totally hemmed in by a recharge basin. That's not right. And the, tangible objections that I'm sure you guys are aware of, the material storage, talk of rock crushing on site, and inadequate buffers. Let me back up and say to Mr. Walker, I am just really thrilled to hear your comment about dual use. I think that's a very positive attitude towards this. And I think I can safely say for probably a large percentage of people in here, nobody's objecting to these this recharge principle. I think everybody supports it. That's how we do it. And I've got a question for you guys. Have you reached out to the water board, and is the water board responding to you guys properly and helping solve this situation?
Go ahead,
Is there interaction? I'm asking, is there interaction going on, or have you kind of been just left like, here's a problem?
We really appreciate Mr. Fritz. We call him Cooper. I'll call him Mr. Fritz on the resume. He's here from the water board. He was here for an earlier meeting. We had a week or two ago about the progressive. So we really appreciate that he has come to these meetings and provided us his input. And we have, so they have been responsive to us by being at our meetings. And so there's certainly a communication line.
They are helping out, and it's not that they've just tossed it at you guys and it's your guys' problems. They're
Yes.
helping.
I mean, like I said initially, the interface here, this is like, we're taking baby steps and we're still falling down, skin on our knees. But Mr. Fritz and the water board, I mean, him saying that he supports this moratorium is,
Yeah, very
is
positive.
the water board responding to all of these concerns.
And I'll add, this is Austin from Planning and Zoning, that Mr. Raybold, that's on the water board, sent me an email yesterday addressing that he would be happy to meet with us to address the future and how we get moving forward. So I think we have a positive path forward.
That does sound very positive, and I'm glad to hear that. I also wanted to follow up on Elise's comment as far as preferring to have a recharge basin versus a subdivision. I think this is a very sellable feature as far as having a basin, sellable in that respect. But how we're going about it currently it's not very sellable. I think if we could deal with the tangible objections as far as, making sure we have adequate buffers, no material storage, and no crushing on site, I think we got something that's sellable. As far as traffic safety, that's definitely going to be an issue as far as hauling material off. And I think the way to deal with traffic safety is hauling the material when there's little traffic. And so that may mean you're hauling during the early morning hours, but that's how we deal with traffic safety. And I don't think convenience is something that we can compromise when it comes to safety. And so that may be something we need to impose, is that, hey, if you're going to haul material, you're going to haul it in some not so pleasant hours. As far as road damage, I'm not sure how to address that. It's definitely a cyclic stress going on, and I imagine Lance is more prepared to answer that. But in relation to that, what we may have to do is go to the water board and say, hey, you're going to have to come up with some specially designed vehicles to help distribute this stress, so we're not destroying our roads. And if it's important, if recharge is important to the state, which it is, it seems like they could help
come up with some special vehicles to help avoid road damage. One other concern I had was, we talked about this becoming a moratorium for those that apply after March 31st. What are we gonna do about the ones that are, well, we have the Mount Ryrie and we have the one there at the 55th. How will we deal with those? Are we just gonna say, well, things got started in motion, there's not much we can do? I would be very disappointed if that's our approach to those. I hope that we would take some action. The long range planning, we gotta take action on things that got started because
Let me address that. First of all, as you know, the hauling activities on the progressive site, Mount Ryrie, apparently that's the first time I've heard that today. Those have stopped because we
road
required them to stop. So the county did take action because of the damage to the road. So that's stopped right now, the haul. And the use permit, which was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission for the enterprise, is currently under appeal, which is set for tomorrow. So that's all, those have their own methods of going forward, but right now they are halted to a certain extent.
so we'll address those that are in motion already. We'll address those.
They're being addressed right now.
All right. All right. Question for me?
I will just make one more comment that as far as the road damage goes with Progressive, we had I thought a very productive meeting a few weeks ago. And they're working together, the water board and Progressive and Road and Bridge and Planning and Zoning to come up with a solution for that.
Good.
So,
All right.
we see a lot of positive signs of agencies and people working together to solve the problems.
One final thing, a comment was, I mentioned, no material storage on site. I think, some people are willing to say, well, it's gonna take several years. Well, if we can dig the hole as fast as what we're seeing it done, why can't we make some mandate that material needs to be moved? Because the longer that material stays on site piled up like it is at these two locations, that creates public resentment. And again, I factor that into, this can be a very, very sellable feature. But if we're gonna leave materials stacked up there for a few years, I'm afraid that's not gonna make it very sellable. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Austin, did you have any? Okay, thank you. Next.
Good morning, commissioners. I thank you for your time. My name is Peyton Hampton. I'm a representative of Enterprise Canal Company. We strongly oppose this interim ordinance and urge you to reject this unnecessary moratorium, or at least shorten or expedite this moratorium on water recharge facilities. To be clear, we do understand this moratorium does not affect Enterprise's current project. That's a separate proceeding. We also ask that, to the extent there's been testimony presented today regarding Enterprise's project, that it not be considered by the commission in that separate proceeding because it's not part of the record on appeal. We're not against the county looking at ordinances to make this process work more smoothly. But a blanket moratorium is going to have a completely chilling effect on what are extremely critical recharge activities. I think, as an aside, once again, emphasizing that we're not against rulemaking or ordinance making so that this process can go better. However, a broad moratorium does seem to it seems to run directly contrary to the state's authority under Article 15, Section 1 of the Idaho Constitution, where the state does have the ultimate authority to allocate and determine and administer where water is delivered. So a broad moratorium like this one directly interferes with the state's ability to allocate and administer water resources that have been granted to water users under a water right. While regulating temporary mining operations may be within the county's jurisdiction, an outright moratorium completely prevents the state from exercising this lawful authority. Second, I think in the big picture, there has to be an understanding about the 2024 settlement agreement that was reached between the groundwater and surface water users. This agreement was reached with the governor's support and blessing and was a critical solution that prevented an economic disaster in this region last year. We saw over 600,000 acres of groundwater users have red tags on their wells, curtailing their use after they paid for seed and fertilizer. Many of those curtailed acres were here in Bonneville County, and recharge is a linchpin to that 2024 settlement agreement. And it's the reason you're seeing the development of these new sites. I think it's also important to understand that the livelihood of these farmers, it isn't just their livelihood, it's the livelihood of all of us, because we do live in such an agricultural based economy. Third, I think it's important to note that our aquifer in the Eastern Snake Plain aquifer is in decline. And these recharge projects don't just support the farmers, they ensure clean, affordable drinking water for the many municipal and domestic wells that rely on it. I think, though this hasn't been raised, I think it's important to note that the state does heavily regulate the water quality of the water that's being put into these recharge basins through the Idaho Department of Water Resources and the DEQ. They require water quality management plans, meaning that there are safeguards in place without the need for an excessive countywide moratorium. Finally, I would also say that in the meantime, there are mechanisms within the county code that, while they may not be directly designed for the permitting of recharge basins, these temporary use permits do allow for certain excavation activities. Once again, we support the county's desire to establish a specific permitting process for the excavation of recharge sites, but we urged the county to consider making this a streamlined and not obstructive process designed specifically to handle the needs of a recharge basin, which, as has been stated here today, are not gravel pits. They are for a separate use, an agricultural use. We worry that creating additional hurdles will only delay critical projects that are crucial to keeping this 2024 settlement agreement in place, and frankly threaten the water security of the entire community. We urge the commission, as they go through their ordinance making process, to engage with the water community. I'm going to go ahead and say some names, but I think people like Paul Arrington at the Idaho Water Users Association, Wesley Hippie and Cooper Fritz, who's spoken today, who work for the Idaho Water Resource Board through the IDWR, James Cephalo, who is the regional supervisor for the Idaho Department of Water Resources, and the numerous canal companies, irrigation districts, and the groundwater district that you have within the county. And we respectfully urge you that if the commission is going to pass this moratorium, we urge that it expedited and perhaps even consider shortening it. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the commission has. Thank you, commissioners.
Actually, I have one. I'm just trying to come up with a way to
Okay.
word it that is not misinterpreted, which is pretty common for me. And not to be argumentative, but you presented some conceptual ideas that this moratorium would be have a negative effect on the future of injection sites. Do you have any evidence to that point?
So the point as I make it, I want to be clearly understood, is that it's the damage that could be caused is in delay. 100-day moratorium on any new applications, especially when we're coming up on, prime irrigation season, prime recharge season. I don't think that's in the best interest of the population as a whole, the citizens of this county, because, whether you're a person that loves or hates these recharge sites, and I'm not saying anyone hates them, I think we've actually heard a lot of support for these sites today. It's critical that we have a healthy aquifer in our county. We have, as particularly the people that are most directly governed by this county commission, who live in the county and aren't on city water systems, they all have domestic wells that rely on a clean and healthy aquifer. In addition to all the agricultural interests. So I think, to answer your question, Mr. Commissioner, I think that the issue is in an outright delay in potential new aquifer recharge sites. And I also would say that, there, once again, I guess reiterate that the reason we're seeing the rapid development of these sites is because we have a settlement agreement that relies on recharge happening in order for the farmers that are relying on groundwater pumping to continue to do that.
So are you saying that 100, let's say, just throwing a number out there, 120-day moratorium is going to negatively impact the aquifer immediately?
I mean, the aquifer is already in decline.
It's taken how many years to get to this decline?
I mean, it depends on who you ask. There's a lot of different schools of thought on that. I think everybody agrees that it's in decline. I don't think the decline is as lengthy, and I'm not a hydrologist, so I don't want to get into trying to explain the science on this. Actually, Cooper would be the better one to explain the answer to this question. But it's not since the beginning of irrigation, it's since the beginning of the decline in flood irrigation that the aquifer has really begun to decline. And that's actually quite recent. I mean, as many of you may remember, from earlier years in this county, almost everything was flood irrigated. And now almost everything has pivot circles on it, which, while those are far more efficient, they're also almost a fully consumptive use, and that very little of that water goes back into the ground.
Thank you.
Juan Rondo, could you please state your address?
My address is 350 Memorial Drive, Idaho Falls, Idaho. Thank you.
That law officer, your address.
That's the law office.
Okay. That's accurate. I think everybody understands the position the aquifer's in. I think anybody that's lived here for more than half a century probably understands how we got to where we are. If you listen to your grandparents and great grandparents talk about how it was before, when they first set up their homestead and dug wells that were dry, and then we dug a canal from St. Anthony, and all of a sudden those wells weren't dry anymore because we changed the level of the aquifer. I think the issue for this moratorium, just so we're all on the same page, is to slow things down so we get a process in place that facilitates the rapid development of aquifer injection facilities, because that is important. But in a way that we do so in protecting the residents of Bonneville County and the neighborhoods, and there's all kinds of things. How do you move by that much dirt without putting trucks on the road? I live where trucks come by at 5 o'clock in the morning, all that stuff from Jackson to Idaho Falls. Their Jake brakes are quite an annoyance at 5 o'clock in the morning. So there's just all kinds of things that have to be considered about how we're going to do this and make it work. Yeah, in a perfect world, we have central parks with sledding hills covered with grass next to ponds where we've beautified the community and made it more useful for everybody. At the same time, we put water back into the aquifer. There's just a lot of things that need to be considered by the state, by the county, by the water users relative to the agreement. And I just want to make sure that we understand we're certainly not opposed to it. We want to make sure that it's done correctly. It took us 1.5 years to do a wake ordinance for our open waterways to protect water users' right to access the water that was being destroyed by surf boats on one of our reservoirs. Because a year and a half to control that and slow down 50 years of erosion that's occurring every year. So slowing us down a little bit so that we can get an ordinance that is right seems like the responsible thing for us to do, and we appreciate your participation and your help in this process. Ooh, yes, sir.
Just as a reminder, as we continue with testimony, that we want to keep it focused towards the specifics of the moratorium.
Yes.
Not necessarily the other projects, so.
Good morning. My name is Brad Butters. I live at 1404 North, 1070 East, Shelley, Idaho. I'm the manager for Bonneville Jefferson Groundwater District. And the groundwater district consists of approximately 110,000 acres of ag land that is irrigated from wells. And as I listen to the testimony today, I think that there is a little bit of history that needs to be refreshed to make sure we understand kind of not only how we got here in the water world, but also how we got here in agriculture. I've spent 42 years in ag finance and the last couple of years in retirement, as they call it.
How's that working?
Not very good, but the paint's staying good on the walls at the house. A few statistics help make that a little clear. In 1990, Idaho had 175,000 milk cows. And in 2024, we had 675,000. We put potatoes as famous potatoes on our license plates, and honorably we should. However, our industries have shifted. The dairy industry is 3 to 4 times more gross income that is available. That means that comes into our economy than the potato industry. That's a major shift. When I was born in the mid-50s, we had approximately 600,000 people in the state. We reached 1 million in 1990, 100 years after our statehood. And in that 2024, we reached 2 million. Our state population is growing rapidly. Going back to those milk cows, they need a place to eat. They eat a lot of forage. Forage crops are thirsty. And those forage crops, in a big extent, come out of eastern Idaho. Last year, we did not have our first moratorium in 2024. We had one in 2023 as well. We were able to negotiate through that process, and they're driven by drought conditions. And the reason those curtailments come along is because the reach gains, or the springs, if you will, that are between Blackfoot and American Falls Reservoir, all the way down to the Neely area, those reach gains or springs don't flow as heavy. And as a result, the Twin Falls Canal Company finds shortages in their water supply and the rights that are associated with those. Last year, the moratorium was for 73,400 acre feet that Twin Falls Canal Company was short. To meet that, 600,000 acres, or approximately 1 million acre feet of water from groundwater sources, were curtailed in the middle of the growing season. We saw farmers who had $2,000 invested in a crop that is still in the truck, if you will, with all of the pre-planting expenses that were there. And at that same time, there was a curtailment that was being issued and negotiated. We were fortunate to get through that and put it to rest. And then we've spent from the end of June to the middle of November completing our negotiations and finalizing the things that are necessary in order to have an agreement that will avoid that type of economic disaster in agriculture in Idaho. That agreement requires stabilization of the aquifer and improvement of the reach gains. That process requires recharge, primarily in the upper valley. The Water Resource Board agreed to support an additional 100,000 acre foot annual increase in the recharge in the upper valley. And by that, I mean above American Falls. The opportunities for recharge are somewhat limited. Maybe back up 1 second. I'm sorry. That agreement has a 4-year increment. And it actually started on January 1 of 2024. And that 4-year period will end on September 30th of 2027. And the challenge that we have is that we have to do recharge in order to keep that agreement alive. If the reach gains or if the aquifer declines, we will be back into the same mess. So time is of essence from the agricultural perspective. The opportunities for recharge are very limited because from the 1st of November to the 1st of April, the water that comes into the system is basically used for winter storage or basically the refilling of our reservoir system. We have a small window that happens at the beginning of March, beginning of April, and runs until the irrigation season starts. And then at that point, the canals have to deliver the water for irrigation. We have a small window in the fall where we can do recharge. Any recharge that is done during the irrigation season is with storage water, which basically means that we have a huge supply in our storage system. And now we as a groundwater district are leasing that water to put it into the ground. And we only have 2 places we can do it at this point, a recharge well or a recharge site. And those sites are very limited. We're a long ways from the additional 100,000 that the state agreed to provide. As a result, that window is very small. And when you say 110 days, we've lost the spring season already for 2025. We may not have it for 2025 this fall. Because if we have a year similar to last year, our storage system will be 300,000 to 400,000 feet less than it was this year. And as a result, canal companies will not be wanting to share their storage water. They'll be holding on to that. So our opportunities come when we have a situation like we had last year, when we saw 700,000 acre feet go down the river all the way to the ocean over Milner Dam, because we didn't have an infrastructure in place to put it together and to hold it in our aquifer in the upper valley. It's tough being in this position because anytime anybody wants water, they always go to the head of the head gate. And we own that head gate here in East Idaho, at the top of the system. As I listen to and I'm going to pick on my sweet wife, but as I listen to the discussion today, we've moved out to Shelley 10 years ago after living in Idaho Falls for 30 years and raising our family here. And we've talked about wanting to upgrade the kitchen. And I said, let's do it. Let's get it done. And she said, oh, I really would like to, but I just can't stand the mess. And sometimes in order to put an infrastructure system in place that will have benefit for the long-term effect, there's going to be a few issues that create some short-term messes. There will be some ripple effects of that process. There'll be gravel that needs to be moved. There'll be some securities that need to establish. There'll be some roads that probably need some repair. But that's part of the process that we have to have an infrastructure that will allow us to preserve the greatest resource that we have, because without water, we live in a desert and our economies will fail, our communities will fail, and our capacity to maintain the lifestyle that we enjoy because of water will be diminished. Thank you.
That's one question for you.
Yes, please.
What's the volume of unneeded water that went over Milner Dam last year?
700,000 acre feet.
Thank you. That number is important.
Very important.
One of the reasons it's important, and earlier we had testimony that led to the idea that all the municipal wells in the cities don't count as from the aquifer, which they do. They're pumped out of the aquifer. Most folks haven't bothered to follow the process from beginning to end, and our 2 wastewater treatment facilities in Idaho Falls and Shelley put 1 million acre feet a year into the river. That's groundwater, that's aquifer water, pumped up, run through the city system, and undeeded water, 1 million acres a year, acre feet a year, 700,000 of which apparently went over Milner Dam. That could be injected. And the department has just approved the Bonneville Sewer District to do a direct ejection treatment facility, which I think is a step in the right direction, because that's groundwater going back to where it should be in the ground. But there are many solutions to this problem, and the length of time that it's taking to dig a facility and get it functional, I just don't see that. We're just slowing things down, not stopping things, but who would next? Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Rob Nielsen. I live at 8633 North, 55 East. And first, just want to say thank you. It is refreshing to hear your remarks, and thank you for the moratorium. I feel like there's just a lot going on, and it's a good idea to kind of slow it down. I appreciate your remarks. I'm just a citizen. I'm not real outspoken, so I won't take my full time here, but I feel like these projects have been going in a little too fast, and obviously they're affecting the folks around us. And I feel like as we slow it down maybe and take a look at the impacts it's having to people and to the infrastructure, that roads and whatnot, that's a great idea. And so I appreciate that. I also, I think for me, I didn't even really know what recharge was up until maybe the fall of last year. And so, just trying to wrap our heads around it. And I know it's a big issue and there's a lot of variables. And so I also feel though too, like there's, as we've learned about these recharge projects, that these facilities, they may only hold water, we've been told, for 45 to 60 days because there's such a short window, just like the last gentleman talked about. And I feel like, and I know this is a little bit outside of your realm, but I feel like the state hopefully is, and it sounds like maybe they are, but they're looking at collaborating with other entities and other departments to be able to utilize maybe some of the existing infrastructure that we may already have, like canals. I mean, you drive around right now and everything's empty. Maybe there's some hope that we could do away with some of the red tape and the bureaucracy of not having water in the waterways during the winter time and in the warmer months when they could have water in them. Just simple kind of outside the box thinking. And I hope that they're doing that. But I just wanted to let you know that I think I represent probably a lot of the folks in our area that thank you for your attention, and I appreciate your remarks that have been said, and being able to make these projects serve the community a little bit better and the residents. So thank you very much.
Morning. I'm David Richards. I'm water superintendent for the city of Idaho Falls. Work address 564 Hemmert Avenue in Idaho Falls. Personal address, if you'd like that too, 731 Ensign Drive in Ammon. And I want to keep this with respect to the moratorium, the current moratorium. I apologize for my ignorance here, but I was told about this meeting about an hour ago. I was just barely able to make it here. From my standpoint, I'm just curious, the moratorium, does it impact, it does not impact current facilities that are using water for recharge activities? The city does have a current site on the south end of town that we are using. And I just want to make sure that the moratorium will not impact that. Second, I'd have to ask is, does this impact, or does this prevent, the moratorium prevent the ability to use existing already pre-mined locations for recharge events? For recharge activities? It's only to mine.
I glance at
Yeah.
our plan,
Yeah.
make sure I'm not overstepping or misspeaking, but that's correct.
Okay, all right, and
It's specific to the mining operations associated with the facilities.
okay. And then is there any kind of timeline with regards to when we believe the codification of the recharge events or the mining, would be resolved?
Sooner rather than later after today's meeting.
Moratorium is for 180 days or less.
180 days or less? Okay, that's a good clarification. Thank you. That's all. Thank you very much.
If I might just clarify, this is Weston Davis. I'm a deputy prosecuting attorney for Bonneville County. This is only for the processing of applications for mining operations. So operations that are already moving forward with the county's blessing, wherever some of those may stand, that's not this. Anything that's already in place, that's not this. This is for applications. Filing applications that are filing and being processed for the future. Only during whatever time the commission may or may not elect to impose the moratorium.
Unless we've broadened our reach, I'm pretty sure inside the city of Idaho Falls will be the city of Idaho Falls, us, so, yeah. Just to help clarify that. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dana Miller, so I live at the corner of this project going on now, 7656 North 55th East in Idaho Falls. So we are the property owners that are encroached by the current project 55th East now, so we have had tons of problems, which I realize is beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about today, but I specifically want to urge the inclusion of this current pit that's going on next to us. Even though, as was mentioned, people that have a full permit for the project, they're not included in this. However,
Appreciate your desire to talk about that project, but as we have a hearing for that project
Right.
tomorrow.
well, I'm not talking about that specifically. I'm talking about why they should be included in this moratorium. Is that okay? 2 reasons.
I'm sorry, I need to understand your request. Are you asking that the commissioners today amend the proposed moratorium to
No.
include current projects?
I'm asking
Because
them
that's
to
not
include
going-
those that are not fully permitted as of this date.
So you're talking about those that are
In the process, but not complete.
process of applications.
Yes.
That are not the current project that's on appeal before the commissioners tomorrow.
Well, this is on appeal, but I'm saying they're not fully permitted yet as of today.
So what I'm concerned about, as Mr. Hampton mentioned, the commissioner shouldn't be put in a position where they're conflating today's testimony with tomorrow's arguments.
Right.
So be cautious as you do so and just stick to the scope of the moratorium.
Yeah, I've just got 2 reasons why I think they should be included without going into details of our issues tomorrow. When they submitted their permit to the state of Idaho, the Idaho Department of Water Resources, they were provided the funding and it was okay.
We don't talk about anything to do with the current project that we have a hearing on tomorrow. Okay,
Right.
okay, so. Don't think I can be more clear than that, and I realize that that's probably what you're here to talk about, but
No,
probably a
no.
better time to talk. about it.
Well, I was just saying why their permit isn't full. Because the
We'll
permit
talk
was
about that
changed.
tomorrow.
I'm gonna have to object to this. He's talking about the merits of an application that is under appeal.
That's
Tomorrow,
right.
this is completely
No.
outside of the scope. of this.
Okay,
I think what Mr. Miller is trying to say is he'd like to ask us to consider including the enterprise project near his property as part of the moratorium.
yes.
But in understanding that, commissioners, we also need to stick to the notice that's been given to the public about the present application. To the extent he's asking to go beyond that, that would probably be inappropriate based on the notice to the public.
Specific in the, the ordinance that was presented that says unless the applications were deemed complete by the Bonneville County zoning administrator prior to April 1st, 2025, and that would be the application to process the hearing.
Process the application.
Yeah, the process, I mean, have a hearing, right, to be able to process the applications.
Which means what, that their permit is deemed complete at this point?
Well, we're not talking about somebody else's permit. We're talking
Talking
about,
about the moratorium on new applications.
So what you're saying, where they've already applied, it
What
doesn't,
I'm saying is we're talking about the moratorium for new applications. The permits that are already in the process or in the process.
okay,
That's as far as that goes.
okay.
Okay,
I'm Darla Miller, 7656 North, 55th East, Idaho Falls. I'm the previous gentleman's wife, and I think he didn't maybe quite understand. First of all, I'd like to start by saying we are very much in favor of this moratorium. So, and I do only want to talk about the moratorium, but at this point, my understanding, I think is where he was going, was number 2, that this is a proposed, as I see on your document had proposed on it. And then this meeting will decide if you all are in support and in favor and go ahead and pass the moratorium. So at this point, it's in proposal. And so what Dana was really trying to get at was number 2 on page 2, which is the one that Mr. Black just read, is the one that we are actually asking to be modified as a proposed moratorium. So yes, we are asking that include any, not just enterprise, anything that's out there that is currently not finished. And so that they are held to the same guidelines, regulations, rules, proposals, anything that you all come forward with. And I have to tell you, as I've sat here and listened intently to not only the things that you have said as a commission, but the public comment, I believe we're really are mostly on the same page. There's a few that were opposed to it, but those of us who are in favor of let's step back and let's do the right thing. I think all Dana was getting at is we just want everyone to be required to do the right thing. I think that's where he was going. So just a couple of things, and I really would like to just do something that Ms. Jepson also did that really for us would be important is that as we are very much in favor and as county participants that have been involved very heavily, my father sits on, and he's here, he sits on the progressive board. So I've grown up and for years have been affected by recharge through him, very much in favor of that. And Dana and I really want to be good citizens. We want our children to have water, definitely. It just has to be done responsibly. So some of the recommendations that he and I put together for these basins that would ask that you consider as you go forward with this moratorium is that no aquifer recharge basin is on land that has been previously flood irrigated. Some basins are currently taking out flood irrigated land. So if it was land that was sprinkled, that's going to have less of effect than it is land that is currently and has been for years and years, land that is currently flood irrigated, because that flood irrigation does to an extent all summer long help the aquifer. No aquifer recharge basin should be within a half a mile from a residence. It shouldn't be in their backyard as they are today. No recharge basins should be within a half a mile from a private well due to the sediment and issues that can be caused from that. No gravel pit should be associated with an aquifer recharge basin where they are crushing gravel on site. We all understand that sometimes you need to get to the gravel, but you don't have to dig them as deep as we have known from some of the ones that Progressive have done. They're very effective and they didn't dig these huge, deep basins. They got down to the gravel and that was it. All material should be, that is excavated, whether it be, dirt, pit run, or, gravel, should be removed, at a minimum within 6 months, but better would be if it is done as it is dug up. That would be great. So it only has to be moved one time. That seems like it would be more cost effective to both those giving grants and to whomever ever owns the gravel. There should be a dust abatement plan that is fully legible somewhere that can be found that says this is exactly what we're going to do if any of the spoils are left for dust abatement. And who is going to be the person that would be actually monitoring that? Who is in authority to say, y'all are not doing that? Requirements should be periodically inspected as the project moves, just like any other thing that we do. If we build a house, there are periodic inspections that have to occur. These should have some form of formalized inspections that you do so much, we'll inspect it. You do so much, it gets inspected. And I don't know who those entities would be, but that could be determined. There should be an absolute timeline to get the project finished. They should not be indefinite, including that then at whatever point that is, that all materials are removed from the site. Mr. Walker, I love your ideas of making this beautiful. And to what you're indicating is make it beautiful, make it where the public could maybe use it, something similar to Rigby Lake. I think that is a great idea. However, some of these are not that way at the end. They're a big pile of rocks that are mostly not utilized other than 60, 70 or more, but not very many days out of the year. I don't know the exact days that they can use them, but I know it's not during irrigation and water has to be in the canals. A fence, I have mixed emotions. I didn't know, as Ms. Jepson indicated, or someone did, that there needed to be a chain link fence around them. I know that there are often proposals for these chain link fence, but I don't know that that was a requirement. I do believe there might be one for gravel pits, and that might be where that's coming from. But I'm here or there about the fence, but I can attest that there are people who do go into these basins and do swim. I've visually seen that with my own eyes. I'm not one of them. There needs to be traffic studies actually completed, not only for, is it safe? How close are these to school zones or to bad intersections or to state highways? But they need to be included, and then there needs to be provisions of how are we going to handle the traffic? Where are the actual entrances and exits for these, and what is the safest for the public? And then there must be approval from both regards to that, both the state and the county and road, if it affects both of those. Sometimes one or the other doesn't get notified and wasn't sure. And then there needs to be follow-up to ensure that that these things are continually met. And I can't stress the importance enough of, I'm one who likes well-groomed grounds. If it is beautiful, the public will love it. I would love it if it is beautiful and doesn't cause damage. So with that, I would love to turn in my recommendations to you just as part of our record. And if there's any questions, I would be happy to answer. Thank you.
This is Weston Davis again, just so that the record is clear. The commission can narrow what's been noticed for the public hearing. You can't expand it. So just so that we're clear about that.
My name is Katie Nilsson. I live at 8633 North 55th East. Just had a few points. I'm absolutely in favor of pausing. We live right across from a proposed project, and it just seems from the past projects that it's just damage control, that, you know, the roads haven't been thought of, a lot of things haven't been thought of. And I love to have a plan. I feel like we can't trust these canal companies. They come kind of say one thing at a hearing and do another thing. in one breath, they say they're gonna be beautiful walking paths where people can swim and you can walk your dogs, and the next minute you'll be arrested for trespassing. So we want to know clearly, what do these projects, what do they entail, and what's allowed and what's not allowed, and what's the plan? I love the thought to make them beautiful, to make them desirable to the community. I don't know if people have thought about how many truckloads of dirt these projects take. So for the first phase of a proposed project, we calculated 50 to 60,000 trucks in, 50 to 60,000 trucks out. And we're just a half a mile from another project. And so I want to make sure that these projects, how close in proximity they are to each other, that's considered too. And then the roads, we need to know clearly who's going to pay for these roads. I heard a rumor that maybe there would need to be a bond in the county to pay for that 105th. And that might be a rumor, but I feel like it's not clear cut. Nobody really knows who's going to pay. And that's something that needs to happen before any project. Did you have a comment about that? Am I incorrect?
I have never heard that there would be a bond, and as long as I sat here, it would be hard fighting against such a thing.
Very good.
It's not the taxpayers that caused the damage, and they should not have to pay to repair it. Your estimate was interesting for the number of truckloads, and just to kind of drive that point. Yes, Lance Bates, our Public Works Director, what the engineering equivalent of a single semi-load dump bed is in traffic, passenger vehicles.
There's been many studies that show one semi loaded is equivalent to 1 million passenger cars.
That really puts a whole different light on the amount of traffic that went down and destroyed the road. I mean, it explains why. And that's why I asked the engineer.
Yeah. Yeah, and just with it in such close proximity to the other project, they haven't even started hauling yet. How do we handle that with Highway 26 and 55th being a thoroughfare to Rigby? I would love.
That's what we're talking about today.
Okay, but just it needs to be considered. That's why we need a plan. That's why we need to pass these things. But we appreciate you guys taking into account the residents of Bonneville County. I feel like there's a way that we can do aquifers and also help protect and make it work for everybody. So thank you.
Comments for the group?
There's irrigation district, and also a reroute the land place. This moratorium that you heard, I have nothing against it except 160.
Do you state your name and address for the record, please?
We
I
didn't
hear that.
quite catch that.
My name is Maroon Spalding. I live at 6381 East Raleigh Highway. Moratorium. Stopped. The ones that were stopped, anything in construction. When they're stopped mining or whatever you want to call it, why isn't everything stopped? What we do with that, I've always shut it off and put down and drive into the valley, you know. And then I thought we had a good solution for that road, that 105 and 105 north. From east to the down county's something action.
Sir, I'm sorry. I can't hear what you're saying, and I'm sitting in the front of the room. I know that you mentioned you're having a hard time speaking loudly, but I don't think the commissioners can hear you. I can't hear you, and probably no one behind me can hear you. So if you'll do your very best to maybe start back from the testimony that you were presenting with your, after your name. And if you'll just do your very best to speak as loudly as possible, that will help everyone.
I think perhaps if you move up here next to the recording device, it seems to be getting what you're saying on the.
You got
Which
my
is
name.
hard being hearing impaired, I get to read what it
My name,
says. So,
Maroon Spalding,
yes,
6381 East Raleigh Highway. And daughter never was my daughter. And I'm with Progressive Irrigation District, one of the board members. And we're all for recharge. But I mean, there's moratorium that cannot shut everyone off. Mining. Now, this gentleman says if anyone had permits prior to April 1, they could keep going. We got shut down, why?
Okay, we're not talking about the restoration irrigation project. That one's a process that's being dealt with in planning and zoning with regards to their permit and the requirements of their permit. That doesn't have anything to do with this hearing, which is for the moratorium or any future applications to slow that process down so we can make sure we don't have the problems that we had with the previous facilities. The previous
We've done
permits.
everything that we've
So,
been asked to do.
okay, we're not talking about that recharge facility. Okay, that is, okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anybody else here? Care to comment? Then we'll go to online and see if anybody online wants to raise their hand. While you're looking for the button on the bottom of your Zoom screen that says raise your hand. With regards to Bonneville County, all of our public meetings are noticed on our webpage. And I believe our Facebook page as well, for 30 days in advance, and that's updated continually until the 48-hour notice for our public hearings, all of which are held in the same Zoom room. So there's only one number, and that's our phone number. If you want to zoom in for any of our public meetings, we encourage you to do so. Public-based government doesn't work unless the public is involved in the government. So we need your input. With that, we haven't done the line.
Like there's anyone they just raise their hand to testify.
Okay, any other comments from planning and zoning or from the works engineering? Any other questions or comments from?
Just really appreciate everyone coming out. One of the things I've said most frequently is, you know, we would do a lot to get the public involved in most of the things that we do, and generally a lack of interest is our problem. So we really appreciate all of you coming out both for and against this.
That, Chair will entertain a motion. With regards to Ordinance 266-25.
I move to take proposed ordinance number 266-25 under advisement.
You can do that, take it under advisement or vote on it today.
Well, that is, yeah, that's okay. That we can pass, we can. Sorry, this is what.
We're still learning the
all,
procedure.
Trying to do the right thing in the right way, which. Be nice if there was a book that actually said for county commissioners, this is how you do everything. There isn't. It's not available. So.
I guess I'm kind of the book.
Yeah. That's
So a motion has been made.
yeah.
You'll need to have a second on the motion. Or if all three of you vote unanimously in favor of that motion, then you're okay. The counter motion could be made. And that could be seconded. There's a number of things you can do. If you do make, if a motion is made to pass the moratorium, you'll just need to make a finding as to the what the imminent peril to the public health, safety, or welfare is. If this is taken under advisement and you want to decide that at a later date, you'll need to make that finding at that time. Hopefully that's helpful. That's right to interrupt.
You're officially our parliamentarian. Appreciate that.
So Commissioner Mallett's gonna stand by her,
It's been moved.
yeah, her motion, then I will second the motion.
Okay. Been moved and seconded that we take this under advisement. Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes and we'll take this under advisement and issue the decision with findings usually within a week or two, but I would expect this is gonna be much quicker. Mostly the wording for what our legal counsel said we need to include, which I would go to Austin for anyway, which is specific language for immediate impact of citizens.
And for those of you not familiar with the process to comply with open meeting laws, we do not discuss it outside this meeting. We may discuss it individually with either our attorney or with planning and zoning, but we won't confer about the terms individually or as a body unless we're here
Then
for.
we'll notice another meeting on our agenda that will not be inside of 48 hours. It has to be for public reading law. So you'll see it on our agenda. We're gonna, as part of our daily meeting, we'll conclude this issue and have our vote and pass or fail the amendment. So I would expect in the next 48 hours you'll see that. Normally what happens is Austin Lance, our legal representative, will discuss it with us individually, but we adhere ardently to that law and do not discuss it amongst ourselves. So that what we decide on is based on what was presented in this meeting or you were public or present.
And that you won't discuss it with the public either.
No,
Right, we can't discuss it with
no,
anyone.
no new evidence gets to be brought before any member of the tribunal or the commission. That, close meeting, thank you. And thank you all for being here.